Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another chat on Through the Noise. And today I have the best human in the world, which is Sanketee. And I've had the chance to work with her. She is a B2B SaaS content marketer with 5 years of experience. And I've seen some of the work that she actually does for companies, and it's absolutely fantastic. So I thought, why not bring her in? Because she is also one of those few marketers who actually understand psychology. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So, hi, Sanketee. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me. This feels so weird being all formal with you.
Yeah, the idea is to keep it not so formal so I can get the absolute unhinged opinions on what content marketing today looks like, what's going wrong, what they should do to fix it. Be brutal is what I'm going to ask you to do because I think more or less most of the listeners are going to appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, let's begin. So I've always felt that psychology plays a different role at the bottom of the funnel compared to, what we write for top of the funnel or middle of the funnel. Buyers are like already pretty informed at this stage. From your perspective, why does psychology matter more here?
Okay, so at the top of the funnel, it's basically mere exposure effect that's happening.
Mhm.
You need, don't quote me on this, I think this stat is kind of dated, but you need at least 7 interactions with a brand to consider purchase, right? So, where the buyer is at this stage will obviously differ from when you've taken them down the funnel. Because at the top, there's curiosity gap, you have like a bit of social proof maybe sprinkled here or there, but then down the funnel is where the serious action takes place. Now here, because of the interactions that have taken place, they are slightly more confident in their purchase. Basically, you want to overcome risk aversion. In social psych, we had studied about how we expect our life to be generally good, and that's why the bad experiences stand out in comparison. Similarly, when purchasing, you think more about the losses than what's going to happen. You don't want to make these mistakes, right? So that's what happens at the BOFU stage. Again, because we brought them down the funnel, some decision simplification happens. They know more about your product, and there's no choice overload. At the top of the funnel, they know that these are the few options, more than a few options, and they consider you at the bottom of the funnel. And because of like your case studies, your long form blogs, they overcome their cognitive dissonance. So they feel more reassured because of the evidence you're providing, and that's how they end up making a purchase. So these are some things that I've noticed. What do you think from your experience?
I think you're absolutely right. By the time we reach bottom of the funnel, most people think that people are convinced to make a purchase, but that's usually not the case. At bottom of the funnel, there's also like multiple stages happening where they're evaluating, just reconfirming, feeling better about making a certain decision because they're at that last stage. They're going to subscribe, they're going to maybe make a payment, and they want to be absolutely sure. So one of the things that I've also seen is that a lot of companies push their case studies alone, showing that successes, but you did bring up a good point. What is the risk of it? I think nobody talks about that. Okay, there is no guarantee that we're giving. That if you subscribe to my maybe a grammar detection tool, you're going to end up with X percentage of an improvement in your outcome because it's usually not the case. You simply just show that X person was able to write better sentences with our grammar tool, and that's about it.
Exactly.
So you don't get that kind of reaffirmation of sorts that, okay, yeah, you're making the right call by subscribing or paying for something. So I kind of agree that at this point, I think people need to think a little deeper that BOFU is not just a success story, but you're also still addressing a lot of apprehensions that people have.
Right. Yeah, they basically just need that nudge to,
Yeah.
click buy.
True. So case studies, testimonials, and those ROI calculators that I think we're probably seeing across all SaaS products, right? They come up again and again as the go-to BOFU formats. The best of marketers, the best of experts in the ecosystem are practically recommending them. I think it's because they tap into that principle of social proof and logic. Which psychological levers do you see behind each of these formats that make it work so well?
Right. You're absolutely right with the social proof thing because it's what helps a lot of people, nudge towards like a purchase. Now, other than that, we basically are more compelled with data and a narrative storytelling. Like, if I if your brand has a clear story, I know as a buyer where I'm at and where you're going to take me, you're more likely to make that purchase. Also, there's a similarity bias. Now, because we're in similar fields and I see that you're using a certain tool and you're doing well, I'm more likely to, opt for that too, because again, similarity bias. With testimonials, again, it's that bandwagon effect. You want to get on the bandwagon. Like I said, similar industries make sense for me to do what you're doing too because it works. And authority bias too, because if a certain product has testimonials from the who's who of the industry, it makes sense for me to use it too because it's working well for them. And there's another thing called the halo effect, where basically you surround positive feelings towards a certain product. So testimonials do that for you. Now, with ROI calculators, like you said, okay, since we discussed this earlier, there are still some cognitive gaps, right? Even in BOFU content, which requires the nudge. Here, you get cognitive closure. So with ROI calculators, I'm questioning, is it worth it? Is this going to make sense? And when I see it in action, it's a yes. So the maybe goes away. Then even pricing pages with the whole anchoring thing, you give multiple options. That also reduces my risk aversion, because if not the more premium one, maybe I start with a basic model or free trial. So these things do help. And yeah, when it comes to fearing that you're taking the wrong call, the thing that brands need to hit with this is focus on reducing loss aversion. That's where I believe a lot of people fumble. Also, with free trials, with demos, I don't know if you've heard of this thing called the IKEA effect. Basically, you think a product has higher value, even if it's inferior, just because you have assembled it. So, because you've, taken part in it, you are more likely to purchase it. So, that's why demos really help here. Of course, I'm not saying the product is bad, but this effect also does come into play where you will assign higher importance to it just because you've participated. So, yeah.
No, I kind of agree because I don't have that much depth into psychological concepts. But as somebody with ADHD, right, I do feel that all my decisions I need to validate. And the best way for me to validate is to check it out myself. So I keep interacting with these ROI calculators. If there's a case study, if I can, kind of probably get a demo on hands-on playgrounds that used to be there in the SaaS ecosystem, where you could kind of just explore some of the features without logging in, without starting a free trial, because that still feels like a commitment of sorts, and you're going to get bombarded by emails, right? So I used to like doing that. So now I kind of understand what you said by the IKEA effect. That yeah, I like to do something before I commit to it. It's like hands-on. I've tried it. It works. So maybe I need it now. All right.
Exactly.
So at the bottom of the funnel, buyers are usually like, really, really worried about making the wrong call. That's what we've been talking about. So I've seen things like competitor comparisons or free trials help reduce that friction. What formats or approaches have you found the most effective at, easing those doubts? Because most of the times, I think you and I have both written, we both have seen several of these competitor comparison pieces. And I think, in my opinion, most of them don't even make me feel like I'm getting enough information. So, what's your take on it?
Okay, I know there's a lot of polarizing opinions on this in the industry, but comparison pages do help.
Mhm.
Everyone thinks it's only about SEO, X versus Y and all. But having written these pieces, it's just how you position yourself against a competitor without hating on them could make all the difference. There's like a cognitive fluency happening here. There are complex choices. You basically maybe like put it into like a simple table, give like a checklist, show that this is why this works and this is why we are better than this, just by highlighting your features, just by talking about what you're doing better. That's one great format. Trials. Although you said you don't want to always sign up for something for a free trial and still use it, that of course I totally agree with that. But again, sometimes for more expensive products also, like if I can use all your premium features for a week, for 14 days. Of course, that's something you want your potential buyers to have so that they understand exactly the value they're getting from you. I think maybe a money back guarantee would also be very interesting. I don't think many do that. I don't know how it would pan out, but I feel like if, especially, your price point is high, you're reducing risk. And maybe if you're a newer player in the market, I think that would be a good strategy. What do you think about that?
Definitely risky, but it does address the fact that, okay, I'm a new player, and let's assume, there's this SEMrush that you're paying so much money for. And then there's another tool that comes in which is charging maybe 10 to 20% lesser. But because we're biased towards brands that are more settled in the market, we are willing to pay a higher price for them. And we won't give this one a shot, although it might have better features, or maybe it might be giving the same features for the same cost. So I think that is one thing that brands can explore, SaaS companies can explore, but at the same time, I've also seen consumers being absolutely unrealistic, right? So uh, they might just end up using your product for 30 days and be like, you know what, I don't want to pay for it or give me a discount. I think we've seen that happening a lot in e-commerce SaaS. So I think one disclaimer that has to be here is that if you are taking that risky marketing campaign strategy, fantastic, because it will help you crack very competitive markets. But it has to come with like a set of terms and conditions, because consumers will not leave a chance to get their money back, right?
Yeah.
So I feel that's one risky space to be in. Although I do have one follow-up question for you. When you said that when we build out comparison pieces, right, and you don't really have to, let's say, for the lack of a better word, shit on your competitors for it, right? What is that one way wherein, there's a lot of back and forth around, hey, just make a consolidated table and that's about it. And then there are other players like Omnisend, for example, who do these very long form pieces on comparisons. And then there's a third format which talks about X best alternatives to, and you list your product. Out of these three, which one do you favor, and what's the logic behind that?
Okay, depends on where I'm at with my product knowledge also.
Mhm.
So, like let's say Grammarly. I know Grammarly exists. What are my alternatives? Then I'll just search for Grammarly alternatives because I know exactly what it does, right? Versus you maybe just recommended something to me and then I want to see, okay, if that's good, is there something that works with this? I'll go on their website and usually at the footer you'll see X versus Y. And um yeah, again, like I said, it's just depending on where you are at. These pieces will hit you differently, but still maybe incorporate all of them in your strategy. But this super long form, I cannot do. There's no way I'm reading that much. And I think it's high time, marketers just stop creating 6,000 word long articles. Who is reading it? Who has the time?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, although I do think that each of these formats kind of serve very different intent, stage, and let's say purpose. Like there's a lot of marketing or content marketing that we do, which isn't exactly meant for conversions, right? So it's meant for,
Right.
let's say, sometimes the search engine, sometimes capturing all queries, sometimes maybe just setting a cornerstone on your website, right? So I do feel that, like you said, you could use all the formats together. So one of the things that we tend to do a lot at Contensify is that we layer it. So for instance, if we know that they are going to run paid ad campaigns, it makes so much sense to just have that consolidated table in a maybe
Mm.
a sales deck PDF format, right? Or maybe a, comparison card or a battle card, or maybe just set up a simple web page for it. But at other times, let's assume, they are not going to use it in ads, they're not going to use it in sales, and it has to drive in traffic organically. Prefer the omniscient approach, wherein, we go with longer form pieces. Now, longer form again is two ways, right? Like you said, nobody reads very huge articles unless it's broken into chunks. So
Yeah.
maybe a listicle is a great way to start and evaluate whether a certain competitor is worth going after organically or not. Start there and then go into a long form. But I think the one reason why most of us stopped reading long form is because most companies stopped making the effort to do CRO on top of them. So you would just see blocks of text, no div boxes, no call to actions, no images, no interactive CTAs. So if you're writing 5,000 words, and if I could give you those breaks, visual breaks in between, which lead to a certain call to action, right? Right after maybe you've explored the first alternative and you see that, okay, these are the pros, cons, features, and I need this, you know the next step without having to read that entire passage, because then you're going to bounce. So I
Hmm.
also feel like I think all the formats are kind of important depending on how you're distributing them, using them, but also how much effort you're really willing to put into it. Because as you mentioned, most people would rather just skim the surface. I think we ourselves have written a lot of competitor comparison pieces where there was no stakeholder input, there was absolutely no product input. We were supposed to draw them up basis whatever available information was there on the internet. So those
Hmm.
BOFU pieces, yes, they work organically, they're able to drive in traffic, etc., etc., but they're really not standing out as
Hmm.
such.
Yeah, and again, understanding what these pieces are meant for, like some are just for traffic, for the
Yeah.
clicks versus conversion. I think that clarity, once you have, I think you'll feel more confident moving forward, because people just generally feel a little heartbroken that it didn't perform. Like it didn't just go straight to like, buy now. It does not always need to serve that purpose. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Next one, which is in line with what you said at the last sentence. BOFU content is often treated as, you know what, we're going to drive a conversion right after it. Right. So most of these pieces, when a writer or a marketer is working on these pieces, there's always this, you know, two boats that they have to keep on foot in, one being the rational play, second being the emotional one, where we are trying to, kind of build trust, build confidence, etc. But at this point, a lot of stakeholders have inputs and then they change the narrative of the piece. I'm sure you have also written
Oh
these
my
pieces a lot
God.
many times, right? So your BOFU content turns out to be another sales deck in a different format.
Hmm.
So, how can content marketers really ensure that there is a good mix of logic and emotion at this stage in any of the content formats for?
Right. So, like you said, they both have their place. Emotion is going to open the doors. Like with a clear narrative, you're instilling confidence, trust, and your buyers feel safe that,
Mhm.
okay, this may be the right decision. Here again, your loss aversion and social proof comes into play. Once they feel secure, once that emotion, you strike the right chord, then you need logic to close the deal, that our solution makes sense, because where we offer competitive pricing, we have all the features you're looking for, things like that. That's when you need to, like, strike the hammer, close the deal. And so again, like I said, open the door with emotion, shut the deal with logic. And how you sequence it is what's important. So if it's only all logic, like I said initially, data and storytelling play a really important place in content marketing. So if it's all data, like it's not storing emotions in me. If it's all
Mhm.
storytelling, how are you backing it up? So
Mhm.
basically, how you sequence this is what's important. One can't exist without the other. Both are needed, right? So yeah, that's all.
I agree. I mean, I feel that a lot of pieces are either dipping towards too much of storytelling, so it looks like a pity party, and then the second is too much logic, which looks like it's a sales pitch, or maybe too many cooks in the kitchen. I think as a standard rule, you're right. I mean, you can always open with something that feels relatable, close with logic because there's an action that needs to be taken. Quick follow-up question here. What's one SaaS company that's really doing their bottom of the funnel content really well?
Oh wow. I
Anyone that
actually,
comes to mind.
I don't know. I think
Really?
three. I was thinking about one that we work together, but skip that for other reasons. I want to praise one of my clients, but actually, someone I worked with in the past, it's a marketing tool. They really killed it with their entire strategy of adding certain pages that their competitors weren't doing. I think they were pretty impressive with introducing new formats. I think I've told you I worked with Keyhole a while ago.
Yeah.
Again, certain pieces that we worked on together, and then the internal team also, are trying to add more relatable topics and like a glossary of marketing terms, and a lot of the Gen Z things. I think they
Mhm.
really did very well with that, and I think they got some really nice conversions because of adding these pages. Someone
Yeah, I think I've
you've
seen it
been,
as well, yes.
yeah, someone you've been working with recently that you're very excited about when it comes to BOFU content?
I would definitely say Omniscient Ace is it, right? Apart from Omniscient, because their BOFU content is layered. What I like about their strategy is not that they rely on one format of BOFU. It's layered and it's fantastic, right? So that's definitely number one. Number two, for me, a good example. I won't give it from my clients. I'm going to give aspirational ones because, like I mentioned, a lot of stakeholders have a lot of opinions on BOFO content. But I'm going to give you examples that where I'm sure that yes, stakeholders had opinion, but they gave their content marketers enough freedom to write pieces that convert. Is Yotpo. Yotpo does fantastic bottom of the funnel content. I mean, they've acquired so many companies. So obviously, there's a lot of narrative shift in how they position their product. But at the same time, they're able to position it so well, so clearly in the bottom of the funnel content that it's that okay, this is going to give me value. And then there are the usual suspects. Of course, there's Shopify, right? As everybody says, a case study is meant to be really small, 2 pages. I nudge everybody listening to this to probably go see Shopify's case studies, enterprise case studies. They are narratives. They are the ones that, like you mentioned, start with a story, end with a logic. They're the ones that are doing it really well. And then there's SEMrush and Ahrefs that I really like, where their case studies, their tools, their comparison pieces, everything you can when
It's
you're
top
reading, you
notch.
feel exactly, you feel that there's
It's
that alignment, between cross collaboration between teams because good insights, really good insights. Doesn't look like bas likh diya, like, right? So it's amazing. It's fantastic. Interesting. So I do want to ask you one question because everybody's talking AI, and I think the last time we decided that we would get on this call was because of AI.
uh-huh.
Okay, so we're seeing a lot of companies really scale the bottom of the funnel content with AI because, according to them, right, at this stage, it's only factual and they don't really need narratives. They don't really need storytelling. So, they can just churn it out with AI, right? But I've also noticed that most of this AI BOFU content is very templatized. It kind of loses that psychological trigger that needs to be there. How do you think that content marketers or writers, for that matter, can use AI, but at the same time also infuse the right kind of psychological triggers that are required at this stage?
Okay. I am not anti AI. So, like you pointed out, it's become templatized.
Mhm,
So, why not use AI for the structure of it? Because
mhm,
clearly something is going right in certain pieces for this template to form, right? Don't
mhm,
use it for substance. That's when, psychology comes into play.
mhm,
Like, okay, let your AI maybe make your competitor grids and everything, like get your summaries, but let the human aspect step into it. You know your buyers better than AI does, no matter what prompts and all you feed it. Of course, you can maybe try to get for gaps, but that authentic detail, like your real numbers, your customers, the context is going to happen through what you create.
mhm,
So maybe you can lean on it only for structure. Maybe now that we're talking about personalization across industries and how it's helping businesses grow, you can use it to scale your personalization, like understand, buyer specific pain points, and then, tailor that to scale what you want to down your funnel. And I think the most important thing when it comes to AI is stop sounding like a robot talking to another robot. Have a conversation with one person. You are
mhm,
not addressing a bunch of robots. So, like, let your jargon go. There's just, I think the limitation with AI is how we use it,
mhm,
because there are so many things that can be done. And with the human element, with, strategists coming into play, and um a lot can be achieved. It's just we get basic outputs because we give basic prompts. Where you use it is what matters. It can't be static. I can't
mhm,
say write me a 3,000 word blog all the time. I
mhm,
need to understand what gaps are there, what I'm trying to address. All these things really add to it. And
Mhm.
I know you have a lot of opinions on AI. What do you think? How have you been using it?
I think one of the things I do with AI is definitely like, quick briefs, quick outlines, but it's not like, how I see most people doing it. I say them, draw me an outline for X topic or an X format. No, you have to make it a little more, in depth, which comes from your experience. Draw me an outline for topic. These are the pointers that I want to cover. This is the agenda of it. This is who I'm addressing.
Yeah.
Now you're giving iterative prompts. You're not giving them just one open-ended thing. Hey, just fetch information from the internet and construct something, because that's a template that practically everybody has. And I feel a lot of writers, that's also one of the catches that I have with writers, is that when they give zero input, right, in terms of audience, what they want to say, what your content tilt is, what the company is about, what do they want to achieve from the content base, and they've just generated something out of I genuinely have a problem with that.
Hmm.
Right. And that's definitely one thing. I see too many people. I think there's just too much of shortcuts happening right now, because AI is already making it fast paced. But when you're doing it in an iterative fashion, you're giving it very logical prompts, right, to go one by one. That's effort. Back to effort. So that was the core difference between good writers or good marketers and really bad ones, right? Even in the beginning. Now with AI, it's kind of the same. People, the good ones, good writers, good marketers know how to prompt it with information that comes from your brain, not purely dependent on the information that it can fetch from the internet. So I think that's one. Number two that we usually use it for is like structuring a brain dump. So for instance, like within the agency itself, right? So we have a lot of these prospect calls, and oftentimes we get like certain topics out of it, and we want to address them in the longer run, but we don't know how to construct it together. That patchwork that happens between idea one and idea two. So what we do is we usually take that dump, feed it into the system, and we say, this is our opinion on it. These were the notes from our conversations with our customers. What do you think are the potential angles we can approach? Because it's almost like talking to a friend, where you say, I have an idea and this is how I'm thinking about it. Let's fine tune it together. And
Hmm.
at this stage, also, I feel a lot of people would just pick an idea without validating it and just be like, okay, run with it. But I do think that that validation step needs to come. If it's given you five ideas, think logically with your human brain. That is that idea still aligned with the objective that you were trying to solve, or is it just something that helped you structure 5 to 6 bullet points into another content base? So I think favor of AI, but the way it's being used is absolutely horrible. And yeah, I think that's why most of your bottom of the funnel content, which is supposed to work, isn't really working anymore.
Yeah, and earlier you brought up using it for outlines. It's so funny because who you're addressing, what part of the funnel, also so important because topic X will in your outline it'll be what is X. It's
Yeah.
if it's a BOFU piece, like readers know, and then people just blindly copying that is not working. They're losing readers right at the top. No one's gonna
Yeah.
scroll down then, and it's ridiculous. I think just blindly doing it is also the issue. Not understanding, okay, fine, maybe you'll learn along the way, but just like not using this is going to be the downfall, I guess, of certain.
I think that's also the issue with intent mapping. I mean, okay, with no offense to all the content marketers connected to me, half the people that I've spoken to, and I think you are aware of our hiring problem, right? When we're looking for content marketers to join Contensify, or writers, right, in particular, we don't find them easily, despite the fact that there are so many SaaS writers, and that's the reason that if you're writing what is X, I'm not anti it. But at the same time, what value is it adding to the piece that I assigned to you? Or let's say the piece that we're working on for a client, right? You need to know when it should be there, when it should not be there.
Exactly, exactly.
That is just not there, I feel. And maybe that also comes from the fact that everybody has forgotten that, yes, okay, I agree that the funnel doesn't work the way it used to. It's not a linear journey from top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel. I get it. But there's still something called intent mapping, which does not happen at all. I think writers and marketers are not asking enough of, why are we doing this? What purpose does it solve? And that shows on
Yeah.
the content basis very, very quickly. The audits that we do, I think majority of the corrections that we suggest after the audits are not that the topic is irrelevant. It is the topic is not structured to address the intent you were trying to solve with that particular topic. And then you have to rehash the entire narrative. So I feel that that's definitely there. Okay, to bring this to a close, let's say you were to give one tip to all the writers and all the marketers and all the stakeholders who are bringing in or getting started with BOFU content in their marketing strategy, what would it be?
Okay, right off the top of my head, I think wireframing.
Mhm,
So, how UX designers use wireframes to know what's happening. This is something that helped me in my initial journey also, where I could move from TOFU to BOFU pieces relatively quickly, is because I knew what I wanted. I knew
mhm,
what I was reading. I saw, okay, there's a gap here, there's a gap here. Why wasn't this addressed? Like, natural curiosity also helps here, reading up helps. So once you wireframe, you see, okay, this is what the piece looks like. This is not right. This is something I want to fix. Once you just see, I don't like blank page syndrome. It's annoying. So
mhm,
once you have your wireframe, you know exactly what you want to put and you know exactly what's missing and how to address it. And I think
mhm,
that's why you get like lesser back and forth. That has really helped me.
mhm.
And again, it helps you avoid the blank page syndromes.
I think that's a good tip. I think not most of us are doing it, or when we try to do it, I feel a lot of stakeholders have a pushback on why do we need to spend time on it. So I guess general takeaways to stakeholders as well. You need to do this because otherwise you're not going to know how the content is going to flow from point A to point Z, and that's why you're losing conversions. Great. Okay, so I think that's it for this chat, but I am definitely going to be following up with specific format conversations with you where we might just rip apart how case studies are being done and how case studies should be done.
Absolutely love the idea. We should totally do
Yeah,
it.
done deal. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.